Great, your skin looks so flawless.
You know what they say, black don't crack. It's finally happening. Take me. It's my time.
That is not the astronomy club I was part of.
Welcome to Cordkillers, the show about watching the stuff you love when you want, where you want, however you want. I'm Tom Merritt, and he will tell you who he is. Shouldn't speak for you.
I'm Brian Brushwood. I don't know who you're tossing to. I'm going to assume it's me. Hello, beautiful people. My goodness, man. We had an exciting adventure just before we went live with the internet going out and everything. But that was a trailer for Astronomy Club, which is a sketch comedy show on Netflix. Is that right?
Yeah, coming December 6th from Kenya Barris, the creator of Blackish.
Right on. But the most important thing in my life right now is the fact that we are joined by the creator, the writer, the executor, the guy who's definitely not melting down right now on the inside because everything's fine. Everything's going according to plan. Please welcome one of my best friends in the universe, Mr. Justin Robert Young of Raise the Dead.
Oh, snap, friends.
How you doing? Justin Robert Young, talk it out. You've got, now keep on, I don't want to put pressure on you, but Raise the Dead is pretty much the serial of politics. You're about to release it. It's going to be an audiobook. You're also going to release it in the RSS feed on Politics, which is your primary gig. But how are you feeling? You feeling like it's amazing?
You know, there's a lot. I really, there's the kind of feeling of desperate survival that you only have from years of going to school and procrastinating to do your homework, right? There's just a million different things that you know you need to do. But also when your friend Brian asks you to come on his show to complain about Watchmen, you got to make the time.
That's why there's a clock in Watchmen, is because it's the 5 minutes that are left for Justin Robert Young to set us all straight on why we're all wrong about how we feel about Watchmen.
Tick-tock. We are 3 minutes to midnight when it comes to my evisceration of the Watchmen series. But if you are unfamiliar, Raise the Dead, thank you, Brian, for mentioning it, is a brand new historical podcast that will preview tomorrow on the Politics feed. And it tracks the 1960 election, with the idea being that we would be less surprised about what happened in 2016 if indeed we knew more about one of the most famous elections in history.
Real quick plug. I mean, my goodness. There are times that you listen to your friends' things because they ask you to listen to your friends' things. And then there's that weird moment that you listen to a thing and then you keep on listening to episode after episode. And all of a sudden you realize, oh, wait, do I respect this friend for a thing that I didn't know that I should respect them for? That's exactly what I went through. It's absolutely amazing. You guys are going to love it.
Oh, thank you very much.
I've got more fawning praise to pile on Justin later in the show, so stick around for that. Let's start with our primary target. Okay, so we're not actually hanging this on a news hook this week. I was looking through a lot of the different articles and a lot of the emails we get, and I realized that Disney Plus could be, it's a little too soon to say for sure, but could be seen as the iTunes moment for streaming TV. This is the one that's got more people talking about streaming television. It's got more people upset about the state of streaming television now that they understand what the state of it is, because they're like, I just tried this Disney Plus thing. Did you know this happens with streaming television? And it certainly is bringing in the masses to streaming. Even though it hasn't begun rolling out a large number of originals yet, The Mandalorian, High School Musical, combined with Apple TV Plus, launching just a scant few days before, has suddenly produced a real glut of high quality TV rolling out all at once. In fact, Brian and Bryce and I particularly have talked in our after talk segments about just how much there is to watch all at once right now. The question I have for the panel today: how have you changed your TV viewing habits, if you have, just in the past month with all of this rolling out?
I'll jump in first on this because I've changed my habits the least. Now, keep in mind, part of my job is to watch a bunch of things. And we've already talked about how we're in the middle of a wonderful content glut. But it has been genuinely fascinating to watch a 6-year-old wrestle with where to begin with Disney Plus. There's so much amazing content, and the stuff that she graduates or gravitates towards is different from what our 12-year-old gravitates towards. And then on top of all of that, you have the sort of casual recommendations I'm giving to John's one of our producer editors here, and he had zero interest in watching Disney Plus. And then I showed him the first episode of The Mandalorian, and next time I saw him, like 48 hours later, he had not only signed up, watched everything, he had also gone back and watched other stuff. Like that discovery, that moment that there's plenty there for adults is, I think, the most surprising aspect of this entire experience.
Yeah, the biggest way that I've changed is that Disney Plus might have proven a point that I think previously, I don't know if we'd ever have a chance to try out in real time, which is that by releasing The Mandalorian week by week, it has effectively captured all of pop culture in a way that Netflix and their binge model has sometimes had a hard time with. I mean, even Stranger Things really only was a phenomenon for a month. The Mandalorian is going to be something that will dominate pop culture based on its current trajectory into the new year. And that's huge. As far as Disney Plus goes as a product, though, I'm with you, Tom. This is an iTunes moment in that it's got the best library that's ever been assembled. The amount of times that, I mean, it's so voluminous that this Mr. Boogedy thing has kind of become a meme. Are you guys familiar with the Mr. Boogedy thing?
For the uninitiated, walk them through this. This is one of our friends on Twitch.tv who's putting this together.
So the idea is that apparently one of the biggest metrics in all of streaming is what your first stream is and what your last stream is. So what people have made a meme of is to make sure that everybody's first stream is of the Disney Channel original movie, Mr. Boogedy. And so that way the data will come back to Disney, and next thing you know, we'll be watching a 18-part series directed by Jordan Peele about Mr. Boogedy, because that's the kind of money and influence that Disney has. But the meta element of that is we know that Disney has this hilariously deep roster, and so we're going to comically pick this one little barnacle so we can focus on. But the joke is predicated on the idea that this is it. No one's ever touched this, and no one may ever touch this unless they bought Disney and created an even larger conglomerated library.
I definitely have noticed a change in my own viewing habits, and I'm going to challenge you both to kind of re-examine that side of it, and maybe you just haven't noticed it, but I am having a harder time fitting in all the things that I would normally want to fit in. I've noticed that I'm not going to Netflix to look for something to watch. Haven't done it in a while now, because there are so many other things demanding my attention. I'm no longer looking for stuff. I've got stuff that I have to watch. Now, that may be a temporary situation because so many things launched all together here. But I think for the first time, I feel like streaming services deserve to be categorized separately from cable. And you may say, well, Tom, we always separated them. No, it used to be there's all the shows that are on TV and cable, and then they show up on Hulu, and then later they show up on Netflix. Then there's the Netflix originals. Well, and then there were some Hulu originals, but not that many. And then there were some Prime Video originals, but the hits would come every so often. We are now in a situation where streaming originals are predominant in my viewing habits over things that are coming in from your traditional channels, to the point where I'm not watching as much of even live TV. Is that just me, though?
No. I think you're onto something. I think that streaming originals have a few things going for them. Number one, the majority of people experiencing streaming originals know that experience is closer to watching a DVD of a miniseries or whatever than watching it live on TV. There's an expectation that, okay, maybe you're on the lowest tier of Hulu and that's why you're having ads, but in general, we're not gonna see a bunch of ads. But separate from that, there are kind of two vectors we can explore. One is, I'd be curious, Tom, how much of your new viewing habits are determined by what you're interested in versus a feeling of being left out because there's a social pressure of, well, you better watch so-and-so before you get spoiled on X, Y, or Z. Separately, I do want to kind of step into the time machine, go back in time and say, for the first time, Justin, your prediction, I think, is being proven right. When Netflix picked up Arrested Development, you made the prediction that it's insane that they're releasing everything at once. Now, in the Arrested Development timeline, they were releasing, the original idea was being able to jump forward and backward in time. Everything all sort of happened at once, so it made sense. But your point was, if you want to dominate the water cooler talk, then you release week after week. And we've seen various iterations that are close to what you were suggesting, but I believe The Mandalorian is the first time anybody has straight up done exactly what you suggested. And I got to be honest, man, it's working. It's exactly right. It's dominating every conversation I have with all of my geek friends.
Yeah. Well, real quick, I will get to that in a second. To Tom's point, I do believe that, we have long since hit the saturation point for me on I have too many things to watch. Like I very rarely am trawling for things because live TV dominates a lot for me. Although I will say, for me, because I'm a professional wrestling fan, professional wrestling is a very demanding weekly obligation, especially now that things have kind of blown up even further than they are. If I did not have that in my life, I would probably be just now hitting a saturation point with yet another behemoth there. Brian, to your point, number one, I will fully take my victory lap on the idea that at least for some projects, a weekly release schedule is just necessary to make sure that you're avoiding the, wait, where are you? Where are you? Can we talk about it yet? Okay, we can't talk about it. With The Mandalorian, you can talk about it because everybody's got 34 minutes or however long these runtimes are on the episodes. I don't know if it works for everything, but I do think that the binge ideal, which was really created by DVDs, something that now feels like kind of a passé metaphor because binge culture began with DVD box sets. Since then, we've had more recent things where we all enjoyed a cultural moment like Game of Thrones week by week. Then we had the amazing sugar rush of, oh, I watched Lost in an entire weekend. It was amazing. Now I think that the shared cultural experience, especially in a world where we don't have a ton of them, is golden. It is maybe more important than it ever has been.
I wonder how important it is to audience retention and subscription churn. Because that's the kind of thing that would change Netflix's mind. Netflix doesn't need awareness. They don't need someone to go out there and talk about a thing on Netflix so that people know about a thing on Netflix. And they don't care if you have fun so much as they care about you recommending it and increasing their audience size. And Netflix is almost at saturation in the United States. So I wonder if there's even any pressure on them to change that, because they may be looking at their data saying like, yeah, Justin's totally right, but the fact is we put it out all at once and it does the same as if we put it out week by week, because a lot of their international acquisitions have to go week by week because of agreements with local broadcasters. So they can do some sort of in-house A/B testing. May not matter to them, even though everything you're saying is absolutely true. It's certainly more fun and gets more conversation around shows when they do go week by week, like The Mandalorian.
I totally agree. I think Netflix, look, nobody knows their data. Nobody knows streaming data like Netflix knows streaming data. They are the best. I wonder, however, how that data holds up now that they are not the biggest player on the block. They will be by subs for at least the foreseeable near-term future, but Disney Plus is coming. And if this is what it looks like coming out of the gate with, 3 or 4 big name original series, let's see it in a year when we get the big reinvest. Let's see what ESPN Plus looks like with more sports television rights up for grabs. Like we are in a place where Disney looks at this as their future, and so far they've been proven to be right. And I wonder what that means for the larger awareness that Netflix has up to this point effectively dominated.
So to the question of whether or not this is an iTunes moment, this is an apocryphal story that maybe is the result just of pure coincidence. But I think it's safe to say that my mom is not the target demographic for The Mandalorian. However, much to my surprise and delight, I did manage to get her and my dad to read the Dark Tower series. So they're familiar with that iconic imagery of the gunslinger out on the edge of civilization and so on. And I told her how much I enjoyed The Mandalorian. And she texted back asking, like, hey, who plays which character in The Mandalorian? I was like, oh my God, did you watch it? She's like, yeah, I watched them both. They're great. Did not expect that. Separate story. So what that implies is that she signed up for Disney Plus.
Right.
New story. Next time I saw her, like 4 or 5 days later, she's asking me, hey, would you mind coming over and tell me like which of my TVs can run without cable and what devices I'd have to get? Like, what might it look like if I was to give cable the middle finger? And so I went to suppose.tv. That's our favorite, right?
Yeah, that's the right one.
Yeah. So we went to Suppose TV, and she told me a few of the channels that are kind of must-haves, and we ended up coming up with Hulu Plus as her replacement. And I got to tell you, I kind of feel like the two events, although never stated as being related, I think the one led to thoughts that led to the other. I think we really are in an iTunes moment where it's just like a lot of people, they will never attribute Disney Plus to the reason that they unsubscribe for cable, but secretly there's going to be a strong correlation between the two.
And we're having a few people in the chat here that are wondering about what the iTunes moment means, right? In my mind, what the iTunes moment means is, sure, there were always places that you could buy music on the internet, but it took iTunes to make two very, very important things. Number one, bring together the heads of the 5 families, record labels, and then also to make sure that they would standardize to $1 per song, $10 per album. And they would give that up for a significant amount of time. And eventually now it's all variable priced again. But initially, to settle the land, that mattered. It took the steam out of CDs. The iPod also made it a new genre where you could put all this stuff. Everything moved in a very specific direction past that. The biggest thing that I would say Disney Plus has, and more to the point, their bundle is exactly for the Brian's moms of the world. Because what are the things holding back folks like that? If you just say, oh, just get Netflix, it's live television, the shows that I already watch, and sports. Easy ways to do it. What is the Disney Plus bundle? Disney Plus with all this new cool Netflix-esque library plus originals. Hulu, all the shows I watched before. ESPN Plus, the live sports. And Hulu also has live television that you can tack onto that. So that's one of those things where now you can just say, instead of like what I'm sure everybody's listened to this, when somebody's like, I want to cut the cord, you go, okay, cool. And then you bring out your 15 different things that I would subscribe to, but I know that you're into this, so you should probably subscribe to that and not to that. This is a one-stop, get this bundle, and then you let me know what you're missing, and we can figure out how to fill that in past that.
Yeah, we could spend the whole hour trying to nail down what iTunes moment means. But when I brought that up, I just meant the one moment when you look back and say, oh, that's when the majority of people started to understand MP3s as music versus CDs. Yeah. Before that, you were a little bit geeky. You were like, what is this? I guess you could do it. And then after that, everybody understood. Even if they didn't do it, they understood, oh, right, you get an iPod and you get iTunes and then you get MP3s. I get it now. And it brought a lot more people into digital music that wouldn't have done it before. Just like Brian's story, which was, here's someone who said, yeah, I know you can stream. I know about Netflix. Maybe I even have Netflix, but I'm just, it's all a bit much for me to bother learning about. And I've got cable, I'm fine. To, oh, I want Disney Plus. I want to be able to sign up for it. I want to be able to watch things. You know what? Now I'm motivated to learn more about the rest of these options out there because I get it now because I'm using it. And that's what iTunes did for music. It brought people in and got them used to it. And I think Disney Plus is doing that for a lot of people as well. Not that Netflix hasn't done that slowly over the years for a lot of people, but remember when we talked about Disney Plus and the scale and the authentication problems? Like Disney Plus is at a whole new scale, and all of it happening in a short period of time versus Netflix's sort of slow burn over the years.
Look, Netflix is Al Swearingen and Disney is Hearst. Like one settled the territory, the other's going to make sure that it gets folded in with the larger culture.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
the part that we will never know is how much of this is intentional and how much of this is serendipitous timing. But part of me strongly suspects that Disney Plus showing up just now after many people are subscribed to Hulu and Netflix and Amazon Prime or whatever, like weirdly, Disney Plus being the straw that breaks the camel's back might be the first like must-have addition that causes an entire group of people for the very first time to reevaluate, like, well, let me look at the whole picture. What am I spending on what right now? Like, because when it was just, Netflix in the beginning, it's like, well, it's $5 more on top of whatever I'm doing. Same thing was like, well, I'm getting free shipping. Great that there's TV along with it. I actually wonder if it's part of their plan to wait for this moment to where it's like, we anticipate that we will be the 45th dollar that people spend on over-the-top networks, and we suspect that a lot of people will suddenly reevaluate everything from the beginning.
Yeah, I the last question I want to put on Primary Target here is, could this be the first time that Netflix is truly threatened? In other words, they've had the first mover advantage. First mover advantage doesn't always work. Ask Napster, ask Friendster. You just being first doesn't mean you're guaranteed, but Netflix has been able to maintain that in the face of Hulu, in the face of Prime Video. This is the first time that I'm looking at Netflix and thinking myself like, I might put it on pause. There's nothing I have to watch there every month. And then I'll think of something and go, oh, wait, except Terrace House. Oh, wait, So it's not quite got to there, but it's the first time where I've thought seriously about it and thought, well, maybe I could. I could get by with it.
But before I hand everything over to Justin, I don't think Netflix has anything to worry about as a company. Like, they're going to do just fine. No, yeah. They're going to continue to meet their quarterly numbers and all that stuff. But if you're talking about in terms of Netflix's dominance as the number one being threatened, we've talked about this before. I'm a big fan of sort of the sports game of which brands dominate in which order. It's very rare to see somebody out of nowhere come in and usurp Coke and make Pepsi number one. But Pepsi did it for a brief bit, and I think that we might see it again with Disney Plus. I think if I was going to lay odds, I would say there will be at least a moment in the next 2 to 3 years that Disney Plus overtakes Netflix in market dominance.
We'll see. I do think that Disney Plus has moves to make depending on how much they want to separate out those brands of ESPN and Hulu. I think that if for whatever reason they decide that those sub brands are not working for them, or they want to just make sure that no, you always get Disney Plus and now you get the grand bargain. That's another move. But also Netflix has moves to make. Netflix has never really gone to live. Netflix has never really been pushed in the way that they will be pushed right now. I'm excited to see what Netflix does because I do think that they know this land better than anybody else. And I'm excited to see them actually respond to something that isn't, for as great as some of the programming is on Amazon Prime, it's boutique. They've got 3 or 4 gigantic shows that they launch. Beyond that, it's not the constant fire hose that Netflix is. And I do think that there are criticisms to Netflix. I think that sometimes the fire hose is maybe a little bit too wide and not narrow enough, that the quality has kind of dropped off in terms of what the Netflix brand is. And now I think they might have to reevaluate that. They maybe they do have to think twice about some of this stuff that comes out.
It's doubly interesting. Before we move on, I'm sorry, Tom. It's doubly interesting because I feel like we've never seen an attack from both sides the way we see with Disney Plus. The fact that we have kids programming, which is dominant, right? They're going to crush on the kids programming side, but a very seductive set from the adult side as well. It sort of makes me wonder, like, well, how do you define Netflix's position when they're being attacked from two fronts?
There's only one way to keep up with all of this, folks. That's to keep supporting Cordkillers so that Brian and I can keep doing this. And the way you do that is not go out and scream in the streets. It's not try to hunt us down and throw money at us. It's a website. It's really easy. Patreon.com/Cordkillers.
Yeah, dude, it's not complicated. If you want to keep us loud, live, and independent, all you got to do is throw us $1 an episode. That's less than, I don't know, a cup of coffee once every 2 months. Imagine that we're hanging out at the airport and all of a sudden you walk up, you're like, oh my God, Tom, Brian, I love your stuff. I would like to buy you a coffee. Guess what? That's going to be $23. And we say, you know what? We like coffee, but we don't love it. What say instead you sponsor us for like, I don't know, a year by going to patreon.com/Cordkillers. Keep us loud, live, and independent. Keep you guys in the loop. Get your own RSS feed where you get Spoilerin time. You get our special After Talk segment. Lots of extra stuff for you guys. You guys are our bosses, and we can't thank you enough for making all of this possible.
And because you make it possible, we keep telling you how to watch. A couple different takes on how to watch this week. First of all, people got very excited about Amazon releasing an infrared blaster to control other TV hardware. This is not a new technology, and it's not even new. Like the Amazon Fire TV box that has the Amazon Voice Services built in already did this. But now you can turn your other devices into having the ability to control your other devices. So the IR blaster controls your other TV hardware using Amazon Voice Services through a Fire TV. It's a small box that connects to other Fire TV products by Wi-Fi. So you don't even have to plug it in. Available for pre-order shipping December 11th for $35 or bundled with a Fire TV 4K streaming stick and an Echo Dot for $80 if you feel like I want to get the whole thing set up. But yeah, instead of buying the box that has it all built in, you can take your existing less expensive Fire TV and add the IR blaster to it, which I guess a lot of people found that exciting.
So let's give the benefit of the doubt that this works wonderfully and super fast. Everything's great. It's as though everything is perfectly integrated. How do they get past the reputation? Like when I, as a consumer, hear the word IR blaster, instantly it translates into 4 to 5 seconds of sitting around waiting to see whether or not something worked. Like, right. Do we think that this is going to suddenly solve this and make it happen? Because there are two competing impulses. There's the desire for us to be able to just talk to an AI bot and tell it to do a thing and then have the thing happen. But then there's, at this point, we're 20 years into the technology that all I could do is associate it with it, misery and long intermittent functionality.
Brian, what you know as misery, many know as reliability. They know what they know. They have a system and they don't want to deviate from it. Amazon is in the business of keeping you in the Fire ecosystem. They want to make sure that you have exactly the tool that you need. What this is Amazon looking at people searching for Fire IR or Fire remote and figuring out, you want to know what? We're going to build that because we're Amazon. We have the data and we know that people want it.
Yeah. And I was surprised how many people wanted this. Like they weren't wrong. There were a lot of people very excited who must have been saying, I wish they would just give me an IR blaster. I don't want to have to buy a new Fire TV that's more expensive. I've got a stick. I just want an IR blaster that works with it. Now they got it. On the other end of the spectrum, Netflix didn't buy an IR blaster for you. Netflix bought a whole theater. Well, they're leasing it, actually. They've signed a lease. Well, we don't know exactly the term, but it's a long-term lease for New York City's Paris Theater. in order to show screenings of its films. The Paris closed in August, but Netflix reopened it temporarily to show the Noah Baumbach movie Marriage Story. And now they're just going to keep using it as an event center, showing their films, doing some previews and possibly other things. We don't even know exactly what.
This is brilliant and predictable and right. And to be honest, I think might be great, because I think there's a number of Netflix premieres. Like, we talked about this on the show. I went and saw El Camino in the hopes that I would be surrounded with a crowded, full theater as of other fans of this content. And it didn't end up happening. There was one other person in the entire theater. But it's like, by doing less and by purchasing that cultural cachet of a beloved theater that had been closed and reopening it, I think this is an extremely savvy move that, number one, of course, buys them eligibility to a number of awards. Number two, creates a cultural center for the premiere of Netflix. So the one thing that Netflix does not have, they're able to purchase and make happen. I think this is good all around. Justin, what say you?
You know, did you guys cover on this the possible rescinding of the laws about studios owning their own?
Oh yeah, the Paramount decision, which I don't think would apply to Netflix because they weren't in existence when that rule went in. That rule had a lot of loopholes you could get around anyway, and now it's basically been thrown on the dustbin.
Yeah. My point is not to say that Netflix would be afforded to it, but it did make me think a lot while people were talking about the idea of studios owning theaters or studios, what a world in which studios putting skin in the game on physical real estate would mean. And there are some undeniable benefits. And part of them are this. Look, we have an outdated system in our modern ecosystem of theater owners, distributors, relationships with studios. These things are rapidly changing, and we are already hearing the creaking of the hull every single time that a major movie by a major director who otherwise would have gotten a studio deal, like Martin Scorsese or Noah Baumbach, have stuff that they want, are desperate to get in front of people. So now think about it like this. Should New York's Paris Theater been open, it was the only place you could go see The Irishman in New York, it would probably be the hottest ticket in town. They have an opportunity to create buzz, and I really hope that they continue to do this with other theaters across the country, because there's a lot of theaters that are going dark, especially a lot of small ones, a lot of iconic ones, independent movie houses that could not compete 20 years ago when the multiplexes started being able to show these art house kind of things on digital prints. And now I think you might be able to come back. If that means that Netflix is leasing or owning little 4 theater places where they're able to run stuff that they own, that's pretty dope in my book.
I wonder if a good move would be to say, take a page out of Amazon's book, right? And say, if you're a Netflix subscriber, get in free. Just validate your Netflix subscription at the door, or you can order online, reserve your seat, and you can come see movies. If they could prove that they can put butts in the seats that way, that could be another weapon in putting pressure on the AMCs and Regals who are resistant to reducing that 90-day window for Netflix. And I don't know. I don't know if it works or not, but I think it would be an interesting marketing move to say, you know what, as a Netflix subscriber, you not only get unlimited access to streaming movies, but you also get some theater access too. I 100% agree with this in terms of, I don't know, revenue generating and bringing it to the masses. However, this particular play appears to be very deliberately targeted at qualifying for awards. And I think they don't need this to qualify for awards, Brian. They get their 21 days in landmark theaters and stuff. They would not need the Paris Theater to do that.
But if what they wanted to do was sort of sculpt, think about it from like a social media perspective, where it's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I got to be there at Paris Theater for the 21-day window
premieres
of
and stuff.
If
I think if you're talking about
an
premieres
event
and stuff,
that's what I suspect they're really aiming for.
They could also engineer partly, sort of like the arc light phenomenon in LA, where
or the Alamo Draft House on the Third Coast.
Yeah, exactly. The creators come out right before the movie or right after the movie and just thank the crowd. Like, there are ways that Netflix can they can effectively make a 4-theater little picture house a constant source of publicity if they want to, right? Maybe they don't. Maybe they just want to use it as a place where, hell, now we don't have to rent out a facility whenever we want to do a premiere. We just always know that it happens at the Paris.
Know, but I mean, I can't imagine why they wouldn't. I mean, can you imagine this factory of nothing but surprises and delight in stories where it's like, if you're ever going to see a Netflix premiere, you're going to want to go see it there. And in fact, that ends up being like a bucket list thing. You don't know if the director's going to show up. You don't know if, like, they're going to start playing games where the guy serving you the popcorn happens to be the star of the show and doesn't reveal it until he pulls off his fake beard or what have you. I mean, this is a storytelling gold mine that also has the practical benefit of qualifying them for awards, which, by the way, awards are fueled by the stories behind the creations that they give awards to.
I mean, it is an element of, if you're going to go see a Robert Rodriguez movie, you might just want to take the gamble to see it at the 8 p.m. at the Draft House on 6th Street, because you never know, right? Like there's going to be that moment where he might come out and say hi. They can. Who knows whether or not they want to, but I think that there exists that possibility. And to be totally honest, I'm here for cool stuff coming out of little movie theaters. So much of the nostalgia of my teenage years were living in those kind of tiny little art house theaters. I love them. I wish that there were more cool versions of it. It's a reason why I do go out of my way to patronize the Draft House, because they care about that experience.
All right, folks, if you want to watch some stuff, we got some suggestions for you and what to watch. Under Surveillance.
Not like real estate. It's all about location. Under Surveillance.
Variety says Noah Hawley. Noah Hawley, behind the Fargo TV series, the Legion TV series, has been hired to write and direct the next Star Trek movie. It's expected to bring back the crew: Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Carl Urban, Zoe Saldana, etc. Apparently also is different than the one that we thought we were going to get with Chris Hemsworth playing Kirk's father. That was shelved after deals could not be reached with the actors, so it's different than that. It's also separate. If you've been hearing about Quentin Tarantino is developing a Star Trek movie with Paramount. That's a separate thing altogether as well. But yeah, we're getting a Noah Hawley Star Trek, Brian.
As a fan of Star Trek, there's all kinds of speculation that I want to wildly indulge in, but I think it's safe to say that what I love the most about this announcement is the fact that Noah Hawley being involved suggests to me that maybe, just maybe, it will be more character-focused than adventure-focused. Something closer to what we got with Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, where the main characters are wrestling with what it means to retire and become old and irrelevant while a new generation comes in. It would be awesome if we got more of that character stuff.
I think also a little bit more of an exploration into some of the willfully bizarre, if not touch campy, elements of Star Trek without having to do a gigantic wink, just sort of sinking into it. Noah Hawley's work oftentimes, especially Legion, kind of leans into it. It's not afraid to look a little bit silly, because they know he feels very confident that he can pull you where he needs to emotionally.
And keep in mind, Noah's very good about creating a framework that excuses it, where it's like somebody gets injected with a dart and suddenly things get drifty and he's having a kind of a psychedelic crazy thing. You know that this is all within the realm of he's under the influence of a psychedelic drug or whatever, but you're still having a good time because of it. I'd be down for all of that.
A trailer is out for the 12th series of Doctor Who, 12th since the restart this century anyway. Still no hint of Daleks in these trailers. There is a brief appearance by what looks to be a Cyberman. Series premieres in early 2020. Justin, how you feeling?
I liked last season. I really enjoyed the fact that they actually had a fairly coherent story about the companions. I thought that although at times it could get touch cloying for me, I think that it cared about the companions in a way that the last few seasons under old management would sort of just let lapse into stupidity. But yeah, it looks good. I like it. And at times, really, my favorite part about the last Doctor Who season was that it kind of leaned a little bit harder into this kind of X-Files-y. When it was scary, it was scary. It wasn't like constantly being diffused by a one-liner. And I think that's an important pitch that Doctor Who had kind of lost. And I was glad to see it return.
Apple canceled the AFI Fest premiere, as well as the theater run that was supposed to begin December 6th, and the streaming premiere next year of its movie The Banker, starring Anthony Mackie and Samuel L. Jackson. The movie is based on the true story of Bernard Garrett and Joe Morris, who trained a white man to be the front of their business to provide real estate and banking services to African Americans in the 1960s. Apple said concerns about the film were brought to its attention, and the filmmakers and Apple wanted to take some time to look into them, so they put everything on hold. Deadline says its sources say the problem lies with Bernard Garrett's son, Bernard Garrett Jr., and allegations of assault on his half-sisters. Garrett Jr. had a credit on the film that has since been removed from publicity materials. So there's the whole story about Garrett Jr. and what he may or may not have done. But also very interesting to see Apple's first attempt at what would have been a run at awards consideration in movie theaters get yanked out from under them right before it could even hit a film fest.
Man, how wild, because if they're assuming that this is up for awards considerations, then I think for our discussion purposes, we can take as granted that it's probably not bad. It's probably a good show.
The trailer looked great. Yeah. And it's got a great cast and great writing, an interesting story. Like, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, what a bummer for Apple that, again, look, I don't want to look like I'm giving sympathy to one side or another. I ain't got no dog in any fight, but we do know that we've been watching very closely as Apple launches all of this. I would imagine this is for them to back away. I don't know if this is an indication of just how seriously they take, we want everybody to be good people working on it, or an indication of like, even though this is really good, this would be really bad if everybody associated whatever happened with us.
There was a rumor that there has been reported frustration with Hollywood and Apple because Apple are hardware manufacturers. At their core, the highest forms of their leadership are hardware manufacturers, and they have a tremendous reputation of top-down quality control. That is a different game when it comes to this kind of content and this kind of release. These are issues that happen all the time in stories, especially ones that deal with real people. So we don't know the full story here, but smells like a little bit of inexperience from Apple's perspective and not having their story straight on this.
Yeah, if not having their story straight, not having properly vetted people associated with the publicity of the film,
alternately, maybe not knowing the automatic script that you go into when this kind of thing. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Hollywood probably has dealt with this kind of thing, whatever the problem is. Well, they probably dealt with it before, and they know what to say.
There is, hold on. The problem there is everybody working in the Apple studio are Hollywood people. So I find it hard to believe that all of these people who have decades of experience in Hollywood would be overruled by the hardware manufacturers. I think they would have been able to say, no, here's what we do, here's how we handle this. So I think there's something more going on here than just not being able to handle the fallout.
All I'm saying is that it's not beyond Hollywood to have everything come to a stop because somebody upstairs was uncomfortable with it.
Certainly. Yeah, that's true.
That is an element here. Again, we do not know, but I do know that I just read a story yesterday about how they're looking to do a Michael Jackson musical biopic. And I guarantee you that nobody let that slip or leaked it without there being, from the studio side or whatever studio that wants to produce it, having an idea on exactly how to handle everything that's going to come along with that.
Yeah, again, keep in mind, Tom, I think my perspective is a little bit fueled by, I just finished the book, What You Do Is Who You Are, that the main thesis is sort of business culture trickles down from the top, not from what you say, but from the way you behave. And if somebody's inexperienced, I do feel like a bunch of Hollywood types, if they detect that nobody's going to tell them no from above, maybe they'd run with something that in a Hollywood setting above would have told them not to do.
Well, no, and I was about to say, is with a Michael Jackson musical, Apple might be considering running it because everyone else in town has said no. And the people are like, yeah, but we think we can figure out how to pull it off. And Apple's like, great, let's do it. Let's try to pull it off. And sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes the young upstart, the David Geffens of the world, get stuff done that the shoddy, the stodgy establishment can't get done because they're too conservative. Other times it ends up with movies getting pulled before their theater run. But it'll be interesting to see how they resolve this. It's certainly an abundance of caution and something that Apple wouldn't have wanted to do if they didn't feel like they absolutely had to.
Just to put a button on it, I do feel like we were talking about the iTunes moment earlier. That was a moment of chaos where Apple had a unique moment of clarity, and it said, everybody shut up, it's 99 cents per MP3. I feel like we're in the reverse, where we're in a moment where everybody thinks they have clarity, but Apple is like, we're here. Well, then what do we do? And we're sort of lacking that clarity of vision that we saw nearly 20 years ago.
CBS All Access launched its kids programming lineup with 2 originals, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, produced with Sony Pictures Animation, and Danger Mouse, the new Danger Mouse, produced with BBC Children's Productions. A library of kids shows is also being added to All Access, including Bob the Builder, Inspector Gadget, Madeline, Heathcliff, Adventures of Paddington Bear. The original Danger Mouse is back there as well. And CBS announced that after the Viacom-CBS merger is finished, Nickelodeon TV shows will come to CBS All Access in January. So, Brian, to your point earlier about Disney Plus having the kids and then adding things on top, CBS All Access starting to look like they're at least trying to imitate that strategy with Star Trek being their Mandalorian and, kids programming being added as well.
Yeah, dude, turns out that kids are the new seatbelts. Turns out, hey, we got a car, it's got seatbelts. Why do I need them? For this. Oh, wait, that's brilliant. I should do that. All of a sudden it was like, we got seatbelts too. We got seatbelts. You want kids programming? We're on it. We're everybody.
And it's amazing how they're doing it because this is a very, this is what Disney has done. Obviously, they have made their living on kids programming, so they can leverage their own IP. Similarly to HBO Max, which will have its own roster of kids programming. But Netflix, by and large, has relied on certain licenses and relationships, but also they've just kind of spun out their own stuff and have done it with a fairly high rate of success. So I'm curious to see whether or not parents want to respond to stuff that they remember from their youth, like Danger Mouse or Inspector Gadget or Heathcliff, as opposed to just whatever random gigantic flash of colors and noises that kids television can often be.
The move for CBS All Access after the merger is to take the Noggin service and roll it into CBS All Access, because Noggin has a huge library of well-loved kids shows, Dora the Explorer, etc. But when your kid ages out, you cancel the subscription and you're gone. If all of that Noggin stuff is in CBS All Access, suddenly you start to realize like, oh, there's some other stuff in here that I might want, including live football. Maybe I will keep CBS All Access even after the kids age out of Noggin. So I would expect something along those lines to happen. Maybe they keep the Noggin service around, maybe they don't, but I would expect to see it pitched in that kind of way. The Apple TV Plus series The Servant from M. Night Shyamalan premieres November 28th. Shyamalan told Jimmy Fallon that Apple has already approved a second season for the production. So here we go. We're going to start. This is another one of those things that is going to start to build up. Is we're going to get a new Apple TV Plus or 2 property every month, they say. So we're going to keep adding these like clockwork.
M. Night Shyamalan might be a particularly good get for Apple Plus in that his brand is generally associated with see it before somebody ruins it for you. So if this happens to be good, then that's a good way to, without having anything to do with price or availability or whatever, to instill a sense of urgency to join the clubhouse over at Apple Plus.
It's going to be 3 episodes at the launch and then weekly after that.
Yeah. No, release the Dr. Dre biopic series, cowards at Apple.
That's not M. Night. That's Apple. Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that is
all right. Let's talk about what we've had our eyes on. One thing you watched recently that you love, Justin.
Hey, I really like a few things. Number one, Ford versus Ferrari. I enjoyed it. It's a lot of boy stuff. If you like boy stuff and you like males interacting with each other and not being good at finances and being acting in ways that could likely get you fired, and a very, 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 very careful portrayal of Lee Iacocca, who is always on the wrong side of history, yet likable enough because he's also very famous, then you will very much enjoy Ford versus Ferrari. Other than that, I really liked The Toys That Made Us season 2.
You know what I will say, the only thing I will add to there is I know a lot of women who have liked Ford versus Ferrari. So when Justin says it's guy stuff, don't let that turn you into thinking it's just a guy's movie. It's guy stuff is what the story is about, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, there are feminine stories that guys really, really like. There's masculine stories that girls really, really like. But this is definitely, I mean, like, you would agree, it could be named Boy Stuff, the movie.
That's what it's about, certainly.
Yeah.
I was actually surprised how much Eileen loved that movie. She really enjoyed it. So.
No, look, it's also a tremendously simple story that features great performances, and if you've ever listened to Christian Bale yell at the lighting designer on the set of Terminator Salvation and that famous leaked audio, then thrill with delight as you watch him perform that character for 2 hours in Ford versus Ferrari.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Brian, what about you?
Dude, I went and saw Jojo Rabbit. Guys, I'm not going to say a thing about it outside of how much I loved it. I care about it so deeply. I laughed. I literally cried. It was wonderful, and it's a real bummer that it didn't have a firm footing during the because it was a Fox property, right? And then Disney bought a bunch of Fox stuff, and so they soft released it. They sort of undersold it. It's great. It's just great. Everybody go see Jojo Rabbit. Go see it not knowing a dang thing. Be amazed that we live in a universe where that can exist.
I was about to see Jojo Rabbit Friday night. Then we stumbled across a preview of Knives Out, a paid preview where they're just have limited showings now ahead of the official release. So we went and saw that. And then Saturday night, we went to the Glendale movie studio grill. Movie studio grill. So this is kind of like an Alamo or an AMC dine-in, where they have good food, wide selection of drinks, comfy seats, small viewing theaters. So there's basically not a bad seat in the house, and you just sit back and eat and drink and watch a movie. And we saw The Irishman. It was weird to see that Netflix thing pop up at the front of a Martin Scorsese movie in a theater. I got to say. But it was wonderful, and this fed a little bit of my opinions about Netflix buying or leasing the Paris theater, which is if Netflix did this kind of movie in theaters like this, I would do this a lot. I mean, I could have stayed home and watched The Irishman when it comes to Netflix later this week, but it was so enjoyable to have a really good theater experience and see that movie on the big screen. Non-spoilery, it's a great movie. It's like the greatest hits of Scorsese. The cast is insanely good. The acting is fantastic. The script is tight. The directing is phenomenal. It isn't anything new, but if you like Scorsese, you're not going to be disappointed. It is an excellent movie, and one that I think is better seen in the movie theater, even at 3.5 hours, which is incredibly long. I thought I would get bored, and I never did.
And specifically the gangster stuff, right? Like, I mean, Scorsese obviously his biggest hits have been gangster stuff, but like he has done other things. This is a return to that genre of filmmaking.
There's even some elements of Taxi Driver and Raging Bull and those sorts of things in here too. But yeah, this is Scorsese doing the story of Jimmy Hoffa, and the people around him, and the New Jersey and New York mafia, and any connections that might have happened, stretching from the 1940s into the 70s. And there are some lovely touches in there that, if you wanted to expand your experience on that history, subscribing to Raise the Dead by Justin Robert Young would increase your appreciation both of history and of both of those properties. They weaved right into the point where I was jumping up and down looking at people, because I've gotten preview listens of Justin's episodes going, yeah, no, Justin talked about that. And then I realized, oh wait, no one else here has been able to hear.
No one's ever heard of the podcast. Yeah. It's a fascinating point in history, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see The Irishman.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if you watch it at home, it's definitely worth watching. Bryce, what should we be on the lookout for?
Hey guys, so on the lookout this week, Rick and Morty has started airing on Adult Swim now, and it got me to take a look at their website and app. And I think there's a lot of stuff on here. So Adult Swim, the late night portion of Cartoon Network, has made a ton of shows over the past few years. And if you have like a cable or over-the-top service like a PlayStation Vue, you can log in and see a bunch of the recent shows like Rick and Morty. You can see those every week there. But they also have VODs for stuff that's like really, really old. They might be ad-supported. A lot of times they're just free to watch. And on top of that, they've also got what they call marathon live streams. So they are live streams just for a single show, and then they have one that's kind of a grab bag of shows. And beyond the TV shows, they also have their own separate live stream called AS Stream, which is like original programming, which has like this very strong public access sort of feel to them. They're live or as live. Some of them are semi-scripted, like Truth Point, which I think is really good. That's got a drill from Twitter on it. Some of them, like Stupid Morning BS, are a morning show. They have a sports show called Fish Center, where they play little screen games with this tank of fish, and they move around the screen. If they hit tokens and stuff, there's points and stuff. I think it's a really interesting way to package all of that stuff together, because there truly is a lot of stuff in there, either for free or ad supported, and they have the app that works on a lot of their devices. So I think it's a really strong way to see that stuff, especially if maybe it's been a while since you've watched Aqua Teen or what have you. So that's Adult Swim. They've got a website, adultswim.com, and apps on most of the streaming devices and mobile operating systems.
If you got something we should be on the lookout for, email us cordkillers@gmail.com. Now, we always like to tell you something that's going on that could also help out Brian and I. For instance, I have a newsletter, freetomnewsletter.com, where I just write you a note that you can write back and we can have a conversation, and I include links to all the podcasts I do. And Brian, we will help people get free things as well.
We talked about it last week. We got a couple of emails, people saying like, was that an ad? Did you take on an advertiser? Most of those people wrote those notes before they listened to the rest of the episode, where we got to the part where we reminded people that Doghouse Systems has been our only sponsor that we've ever done an ad for, because they provided the original streaming computer for this podcast, 6 years ago? My goodness, we're old. And then now they've provided a whole suite of systems for this entire production studio. If you would like to reward their faith in us, then head on over. Sooner or later, you're going to have to buy a computer. Might as well get best of breed performance, best of breed customer service, the whole 9 yards. Go to doghousesystems.com/v/rogue. And then when you do check out, use promo code ROGUE, you get a free 250 gigabyte SSD drive. And thank you so much for believing in us, Doghouse Systems. We appreciate it.
All right, let's move on to the front lines.
Frontlines.
Distributor Carsey Warner used to be a comedy production superstar back in the day, but had to shut down its production operations in 2005 as the comedy market on TV started to dry up. It's now pursuing streaming deals for what is one of the largest independent comedy libraries out there. For instance, a deal for that 70s show to be on Netflix is in its final year, so they may be able to get some more money out of Netflix or take it somewhere else. Most of the rest of the Carsey Warner comedies are on Prime Video from Amazon. That's where Roseanne and A Different World are. Those are up in 2020. The rest of the library seems like it's probably going to be up in 2021. And the company has now gone from unable to find a buyer for it in 2004 to being worth more than $1 billion.
Do you think that this object lesson is being learned by everybody else? Like, there's a brief moment that whatever it is you have, as long as you've reached so many people, no matter how unpopular it is at some point, just wait 15, 20 years and all of a sudden it'll be worth something?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, but certainly if something's not valuable right at that moment, it doesn't mean it won't. Like, if it's got valuable things, with which Carsey Warner always did, it's likely that those will become valuable again. And we are in a world where people who own the libraries, people who actually make shows, are winning.
Yep.
Content is king.
The merger of Viacom and CBS is now expected to close on December 4th, with the two companies officially becoming a single entity on December 5th. The new company will be called Viacom CBS and trade under the stock tickers VIACA and VIAC.
Finally, gosh, December 4th, we can stop saying forthcoming and just be on with it.
Can you imagine that with this merger, finally, on a CBS broadcasted Super Bowl, we can get MTV to produce the halftime show?
That worked really well last time.
Our long national nightmare will come back. Netflix has struck multi-year deals with two major South Korean production companies. CJ Entertainment Studio Dragon, makers of Goblin and Signal, have a 3-year Netflix deal for content production and distribution. And JTBC Content Hub, makers of Sky Castle, huge hit, and Something in the Rain, has a multi-year program supply deal with Netflix. So watch out, Vicky. Netflix starting to take over the deals in the Korean market.
Oh man, you hear that, my mom? My mom's name is Vicky.
Well, hold up. Before we go further, Tom, you're the one who watches these Korean shows. Is this a big deal?
Yes, this is a huge deal. Goblin is probably the most popular show on Viki worldwide, and Sky Castle was the most popular show in Korea and is now one of the most highly rated and highly watched shows on Viki. So super smart of Netflix to take over that market and say there is a dedicated and ravenous audience for these kinds of dramas out there, and we're going to have the best ones.
At the Code Media Conference, Warner Media CEO John Stankey, speaking of HBO Max, said, quote, "We're basically unbundling to rebundle. At some point, there will be platforms that re-aggregate and rebundle, and we'd like the HBO Max platform ultimately to be a place where re-aggregation occurs. And that doesn't just mean our content," he said. Warner Media wants to wants to create a bundle of content that it owns along with movies and shows that it doesn't. Man, if there's one thing we've been super consistent on this program is that, gee whiz, the mushy middle. Is it ever a garbage place to be or what? Congratulations. Welcome to the mushy middle.
Yeah, put your waiter boots on, John Stankey, because it's mushy right there. Hey, if you were confused about HBO Max being both HBO and not HBO, we're also going to make it more confusing in the future and bring back the thing you hate, bundling. Just talking to professionals, but yeah. The Verge reports that the head of Disney's direct-to-consumer division, Kevin Mayer, says difficulties with the Disney Plus app at launch had to do with the way the company architected the app. So it wasn't the bandwidth, it wasn't the streaming provider, it was the way they made the app. Mayer said that BAMTech, aka Disney Streaming Services, had never seen the high volume of streams, even when hosting things like HBO and MLB. And it exposed limits to the architecture, the way they had coded it. Meyer says Disney will recode the app within the next couple of weeks to fix issues affecting things like, if you have noticed that if you go back to continue watching, sometimes it just starts in the beginning, stuff like that is appearing falling through the cracks because they just had more people using this app than they expected.
That is the one get out of jail free coupon that you get to use. It's whatever your problem is. That problem is because we're so popular, nobody was prepared for this.
But it's also a real issue. There are things you can do in coding where you're like, hey, at 2 million users, this extra second to do a simpler bit of code won't make a difference. And then you get 10 million users and suddenly you're like, why is our authentication server failing? Oh, right, because it's timing out because we put that extra second to make the code more efficient.
Look, one of my favorite lines in the sands and reasons why you should be listening to the Daily Tech News Show and all of the Tom iterations of Daily Tech News Shows previous is that you were the first person, Tom, I remember saying either on the show or in the process of making it, Twitter going down isn't news. It was news maybe the first time it happened, but Facebook going down isn't news. AWS going down isn't news unless we have some element to it. We're already so far beyond the Disney Plus issues. Yes, there are some things, and that on a technical level is interesting to hear Disney admit that indeed they have to recode their app. But I'm with Brian. At a certain point, we don't need to hear the fact that you have a skinned elbow because you tripped on your own peen.
Yes. Sling TV is now supported on the Google Nest Hub and the Nest Hub Max alongside YouTube TV. So you can say things like tune to NHL Network on Sling to the smart displays and get the live channel from Sling. Amazon does a similar thing on the Echo Show with Hulu Live TV.
Yeah. I've tried to use this on my Echo Show. It's a limitation in how good the voice assistant is at being able to tell what I want sometimes, but I like the idea of it. And this could be a small opportunity for Sling to get some people. All right, let's move on to some dispatches from the front. We have a couple of very sad cord cutters in our email this week. Pat M. Wrote in talking about how he cut the cord 18 months ago, was paying $250 a month for internet and cable, and then he found out about Sony getting rid of PlayStation Vue and is having a hard time finding a replacement because he wants plenty of simultaneous streams. He wants NFL Red Zone. So he wandered back to Xfinity's website and found an upgrade to his internet speed, a 140 channel package. He looked at Fubo, but Fubo didn't have all the channels he wanted. As much as it pains me to say, says Pat M., to be back in the corded world, it was the best deal. And perhaps it signals that Xfinity is paying attention to the streaming TV services and realizing they have to compete. Maybe 2 years down the road, the streaming TV services will eventually offer what I want and need again, and I'll be able to go back to being cordless.
Hey, man, we support you. We're about watching what you want, where you want, whatever device you want.
So
if that means cable, so be it.
His big thing was simultaneous streams.
Simultaneous streams and NFL Red Zone.
Yeah.
Along with a few other considerations that he wanted to have in there. And he went to Suppose.tv, and Suppose.tv includes cable packages, and found out, well, Xfinity actually has the best package for me.
Amar writes us saying, Dear Killers, I have had an idea to create a shared Plex server for our entire family for a while, but in the past month, I decided to take the concept more seriously and create a plan for how I would actually carry this out. We have a good amount of DVDs, including some TV shows, and I was buying some DVDs too. I'd like to combine our selection into a streaming service that we can all share our content with each other. I have a Plex server for personal use. I enjoy the level of control that Plex gives you, and I think it could make for a great experience for my siblings back home. However, I pitched the idea to my siblings and parents, creating a Google form, asking them what they want the service to be like, and I got a variety of responses. My siblings are excited for it. My dad was miffed that I wasn't planning on live sports. I later explained that I could add an antenna feed for using something like an HD home run, but that wouldn't be the focus starting out, and asked about adding sermons to the service. But interesting, my mom was concerned that it was illegal, saying this would be, quote, stealing streams. I don't really see how this is illegal, as we're basically sharing our DVDs with each other, but I'm wondering if this is something you guys think is legal or not. Perhaps you know more about the legality of these things than I or my mother. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much, Mar. First of all, as far as we understand, Plex is...
We are not lawyers.
Yes, that's what we know first and foremost. We're experts in knowing that we are not lawyers. But to the best of our ability and on the stories that we've covered, I do believe a Plex server is fine. There might be a bit of trouble in the ripping of encryption, depending on how you squint at certain stuff. But Tom, this all seems above board to me.
Yeah, if you're circumventing encryption, if you're circumventing copyright protection specifically, you're in violation of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. So if you didn't use any kind of copyright circumvention to rip your DVDs onto your Plex server, then you haven't broken that law. But
Also, keep in mind the Betamax ruling of the late 1970s indicates that you are legally entitled to have a backup copy of your stuff.
You are not. Under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act.
Yeah.
You cannot circumvent copyright protection even to make a personal backup copy.
Oh, no. I'm saying, assuming you somehow found yourself in possession of a backup copy of your stuff. We're not talking about the moment of subverting it. Okay. Like, you are entitled to have a backup copy of your software. You are entitled to time shift your programming. The only hiccup is subverting the encryption.
Sure. So if you didn't subvert your copyright protection, then you have the right to put it on your server. If you are using the server to stream it to yourself, that's fine. It's your copy. If, however, you are using it to stream to a household you are not a member of, that could be problematic. And it gets really gray when you're at college and the folks at home are watching it. However, the practicality of it is nobody is going after these particular uses these days.
No, stop terrifying poor Amar here. He's getting enough from his mom and dad. Look, here, I want you should put a sermon on there. You should have the serenity prayer, because these ingrates, my God, Amar, just put up the Plex server, tell him that it's live, and then at that point, start taking feedback. Your only problem is that you didn't just make it and tell them to go interact with it. You asked them how to build the perfect mousetrap, and it turns out you got this crazy contraption where your dad wants to have SEC football while he's getting his Psalms delivered, and all the family DVDs are on there.
Also, we do make a pretty strong point of distinguishing between the legal versus the ethical thing. Oftentimes, they're not exactly the same thing. I would say, in my book, if you're looking for our blessing, I think what you're describing is 100% ethical. You have the Brian Brushwood seal of ethical approval. Whether or not it is per the letter of the law legal, that sounds like something above my pay grade.
Yeah, we cannot indemnify you against any kind of legal proceedings, but then it's probably unlikely that any are going to happen. So, hey, everybody, Justin Robert Young has an amazing show out, and you are going to want to hear it. If you're a history buff, if you're interested in the world around you, if you just want to hear a good story told involving skullduggery and corruption and backstabbing and deal making, you've got to check out Raise the Dead. Justin, thank you so much for being with us on the show, and thank you for making Raise the Dead. Is so good.
All right, real quick point of order. It is not out yet. It drops next week, so December 5th is when it is out. However, if you are listening to me right now, what you can absolutely do is subscribe to my politics podcast, Politics. At that point, you will get either tomorrow, or if you're listening to this after on the 26th, you will get the first episode. It is going to be previewed on the Politics feed. So you will be able to hear episode 1 next week. We have the official launch of it, which will have a slightly longer, enhanced episode of version of episode 1. But you get to listen to it tomorrow. I got to say, there's a reason why I have thanked Brian Brushwood over and over and over again for his point of view on putting this together. Tom is thanked at the end of each episode, because he was somebody, along with our friends Brett Rounsville and John Teasdale, who were literally, I could just send them versions of episodes constantly, and they would always get back to me within days, sometimes hours, and that was invaluable. Again, the real short version, the 1960 election, Kennedy versus Nixon. You might say, man, I didn't even know those two ran against each other. Or, man, isn't that the one with the television debate? I guarantee you that what you don't know about this election would have absolutely filled in a ton of knowledge gaps and would have made you a lot less surprised by what happened in 2016. Allow me to explain it to you on Raise the Dead.
Our website is cordkillers.com. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com. And we're live on twitch.tv/Night Attack, which is also carried on diamondclub.tv Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. See you again next time.
Hey guys, Brian and Tom here, and it's just the same old message at the end of the credits, just like always.
That's right, Brian. Nothing new here except your name showing up.
Oh my gosh,
because
I've got a
you
name.
just supported us on Patreon.
Yeah, all those $5 donors, look at that. That's your name in pixels. We're gonna make you famous, kid. Put your
There's
name in
some
pixels on
classic
the internet.
names in there, but some of you are new. Some of you aren't there. It's sad. What can they do, Brian?
I mean, they could go to patreon.com/cordkillers and pledge $5 an episode and be one of these amazing people, like this one.
Amazing.
Oh, look at that name right there.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.